So we're going to split the presentation into two parts. I will spend about 10, 15 minutes doing a very practical show and tell on how people can figure out how to spend their time in the upcoming fall edition of Secure Worldwide based on propagation. Basically, the lowest level of effort one can do to maximize their score and maximize their fun, but in share as well based on propagation. And then Bob will take it from there to do a much deeper dive on how to use the propagation to your advantage, how to decide when to run, when to do S&P, what bands to use, and so on. I do not have slides deliberately because the purpose of this is to do it in real time. And after I'm done with what I'm going to show the club, I'm actually going to share the links to the propagation reports so that anybody can use them and deploy them in your strategy over the weekend. So let me switch. All right, so can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, good. So the online propagation tool that I've been using for many years is VOACAP, which stands for Voice of America. I don't know what CAP is, but obviously it's something propagation related. And it is the online version of a similar tool that's been available for many, many years to run on desktops. First, it was developed in Fortran. Then we've seen a bunch of other reincarnations. And this particular one is a web version. So I personally like it because of its simplicity. And more importantly, you will see in a moment the ability to give you fairly actionable recommendations without knowing anything about propagation. And that's really my goal, help everybody figure out what and when bands to use based on propagation. So there is very little setup that needs to be done up front. You may recall that the other day I asked for the club center, and evidently the consensus is our grid locator is Fox Nancy 32 Sugar Oscar. Is that correct, Ken?
Yes.
And go
That would be a good one.
Okay. And for the purpose of what I'm going to show you, again, which is the lowest level of effort, all we need is the center for the propagation prediction. The second part of the exercise is to select the mode. So in this particular case, we're preparing for a phone contest. Output power. I don't know what the output power for most of the club members is, but let's say for the sake of argument that on average is 500 watts. I know that there are plenty of people that do not use amplifiers. Some use amplifiers. When you do this, if you want to do this on your own, you can certainly change the output power. And then the next, I would say, critical setting is defining what antennas are going to be used for the purpose of the propagation. The transmit antenna obviously is yours, and the receive side is, in my experience, or what I've been doing, is based on certain assumptions and goals. Do you only want to be able to work the average, let's say, European station, or you're going after the big guns? Those are individual choices. I will make some recommendations in a moment. So again, I will make some sweeping assumptions here. You can take the time to do this on your own after this call. But let's say for 10 meters, the average Y triple Seer has a 3-element Yagi at 50 meters. And it doesn't have to be a monoband, could be a tribender. But let's say for the sake of argument that it's 3 elements on 10. Likewise, we're looking at, let's say, also 3 elements at 50 feet, 20 being bigger antennas, let's say 2 element. Whoops, no, that's the wrong one. 2 element at 50 feet, garden variety dipole for 40 at 50 feet. And let's say for 80 meters, I don't know how typical it is, but let's try a ground plane, a vertical. Again, you can certainly change all these assumptions based on your own station. So let's do the same for the other end of the path. 3 elements on 10, 3 elements on 15, 2 elements on 20. Those are bigger antennas, a dipole on 40, and a vertical on 80. Let me pause for a second. Is everybody following along? Any immediate questions anybody wants to ask? Okay, good. Then the next step is, if I can remove this bar, is a little bit more on the settings side. We're going to define your environment. Let's, for the sake of argument, assume that most of you are in a residential area. This impacts band noise, so it's going to be higher. SSN, you can leave it as is. -1 means that the software is going to look it up, and evidently the current level is 134. And here, we're going to define what the output is going to look like. You will see it in a moment. My recommendation is you pick CQ zones, and basically what this is going to do is organize the output band by CQ zone, and then color code your ability to make a QSO with that part of the world. We're going to use more real-time predictions based on the month as opposed to averages for the year. And last but not least, right here, we're going to pick a specific day. Now, to be crystal clear, VOACAP, the underlying software by itself, really deals with averages for the month as opposed to specific dates. So the prediction is not going to be fundamentally different if you choose the 25th or the 26th or the 28th. It's more of a, as it makes the estimates based on averages, are we closer to the beginning of October and therefore use October numbers, or as we're getting into closer to November, use November numbers. So key point here is precision is not that important. So that's really all the setup that I'm going to do. Remember, the goal of this was to be super lazy, do as little work as possible, and get the most benefit of the software. So the next step is click on this button here, Planner. So let me pause for a second so people can see it. But this is where the secret sauce happens. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to hit the Planner button. And this screen looks very boring, very plain, but is actually going to take us to everything we need. You see that the output is organized by bands. We don't care about the work bands. We're going to look at the contest bands. But if you want to look at the rest of the bands, you certainly can. 160 is missing for a very good reason. This software was never written to make predictions for 160. 160 is a very difficult band with a lot of unusual propagation. So software was never attempted to make these predictions. So we'll click on the prediction for 80 meters. And before we actually start looking at zones and time of day, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and draw your attention to the color code. And the reason the color code is very important is because I've had a number of conversations with other folks around visualization of prediction or propagation. And the immediate reaction of everybody has been, oh, it's red, therefore it is bad. Actually, in the world of propagation prediction is the other way around. Hot is red, and the band is really popping, whereas white and blue means that the band is pretty much dead. So it is very important to keep that in mind. They give you at the bottom certain percentages, and that's the percentage of being able to make a QSO with what we're going to discuss in just a second, based on the inputs that we selected, which is the antenna, the height, sunspot numbers, and so on. And this is where we start looking at the actual propagation table to understand what's happening. It is organized by zone. Here on the right, you see the zones. And on the very top, we see the time of the day. This is in Zulu hours. The resolution is 1 hour. So when we look at this table, what do we learn from it? And obviously, those of you that have been operating for a long time are not necessarily surprised by the results, but still, it is important to know based on data as opposed to just based on experience what the propagation is going to look like. So in this particular case, we see that zone 2 is going to be quite loud during the first, the first 10 hours of the contest on 80, based on your antennas, based on your height and the current solar weather. Also going down the table, we see that later at night, 8 and 9 Zulu, zone 4 is going to open. Basically, US kind of propagation, a little bit of the Caribbean. But when we look at the rest of the world, it is dead. Not much going on 80. Zone 40, obviously it's near New England. It is doable, but by and large, this is the best bet given the power we defined, given the antenna selection and the number of sunspots. The most likely outcome is working zones 1 through 8 during the first 10 hours of the day. And a few other exceptions, zone 33, EA8 is always loud, but that's about it. I would say 80 doesn't look very exciting for this weekend. So let me pause and see if anybody has any questions before we take a quick look at the other bands.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So what is the gray? If the block has got gray in it, what does that mean?
So we scroll to the very bottom, and it basically says either go do gardening or have very low expectations that you'll be able to make a QSO.
Okay.
I believe, and I should have verified this, I was thinking about this as I was getting ready for the call. I was thinking that the different characters that are in each cell are a different representation of that color code here, because this way you can present the information for colorblind individuals. But if you're not colorblind, again, and you can see the colors, that's what you care about. You want to see anything warmer in color than green, because the dark green is 50% probability that you'll be able to make a QSO. Does this make sense, Ken?
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. Remember, the warmer the color, the better. So we'll do the same for the other bands. We'll take a look at 40. I would expect that 40 is going to be a lot more interesting, and this is what the computer tells us. Again, I'm not going to go through each and every zone or each and every hour, but the propagation certainly looks a lot more interesting. Basically, through the first half of the day, we should be comfortably able to do anything from zone 1 to, what is it, zone 14, zone 15, which includes North America, Europe, and a little bit of South America. And likewise, there's some interesting propagation during those early hours. EA8, Africa, ZD8, and the usual suspect, zone 40. So looking at this, 40 is definitely going to be a good band to operate. You'll be able to maintain high rates. Again, these orangish, reddish colors are a very good indication that you'll do quite well, whereas the blues and the blanks, forget about it. If you were to take a pause, take a break, looks like 16 to 19 Zulu probably is a good time to do so, at least if you're thinking of operating single band on 40, because you get a lot of white space during that time. Let me pause again, see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, there are lots of intervals that have colors in the boxes, but no symbol. Zone 5, for example.
Zone 5. I see symbols everywhere. Oh, never mind. You're right. Yeah, good question. I will reach out to the guy. Again, my personal Rudy speculation is that the symbols are more for colorblind people as opposed to visualize different aspects of the propagation. But that's a great question. I'll follow up with the team maintaining the site, get the answers, and communicate to the club.
Yeah, curiously, it seems to be only the home zone that does that.
You're right. That's a really good observation. Maybe that's the answer. But anyway, let's not speculate. I'll find out and I'll share my findings.
Thank you.
So we'll do the same on 20. Obviously, I'm not going to spend too much detail. I think at this point, you guys get the idea. Red is good. White is really bad. Don't bother. And everything in between has different shades of the ability to make a QSO. I kind of see a pattern once we work North America, 14 through 19, probably not worth spending very much time because you will not be able to comfortably do other zones. Multipliers, of course, will show up, but if the expectation is that you'll be able to run and maintain high rates based on the table, I don't really see it. And yes, it does split some of the zones because they're in different continents. 15, oh my God, I love 15. It's going to be a lot of fun. Basically, after 10, 11 Zulu, you can work pretty much the whole world with good propagation. As expected, the Caribbean, South America, they're going to be loud. It's going to be a lot of fun. And let's look at 10. I think 10 is going to be not as much fun as 15. Again, Caribbean, South America, Europe, of course. Oh, I was wrong. And then a lot of good stuff in the mid to high 30 zones. So that's all I wanted to show you. Again, the purpose of this very brief show and tell is to demystify how you can generate propagation predictions, and more importantly, how to interpret the data and take advantage of it. As a final reminder, the redder, the warmer the color, the better. The cooler the color, not so good. And by taking the time to study these predictions, again, I'm going to share the links so that everybody can study them at your own pace. as you take time to study the predictions, you can really formulate your strategy in such a way that you take advantage of the propagation, which in my mind means two very simple outcomes. The first one is you can improve your score because you can focus on higher run rates if that's something you want to pursue, or your ability to work multipliers. And the second objective, I believe this prediction fulfills, is give you a lot more fun and satisfaction operating the contest. Nobody really likes operating during dead bands. So that's my part of the presentation. Bob will take it from here and do a very deep dive on how you respond to changes in propagation in real time, how you fine-tune your strategy if you plan on operating for prolonged periods of time, when you have to make the decision, do I stay on this band, do I go somewhere else, do I run, do I look for multipliers? And hopefully between the two, you'll be better prepared to do better and have more fun this coming weekend. So before we switch to Bob, any questions?
Rudy, it's KV1J.
Yeah.
When you go in and you do the settings, you know, with the antennas and all that, does it save it, cache it anywhere, or when you load the program, do you have to re-enter it?
You don't have, well, it doesn't save it if you close the browser or the tab. So as long as the browser is open, it will remember the settings. So
Okay.
not ideal, but it's good enough. I don't think people run daily predictions, right? So maybe that's a good compromise. By the way, I do want to highlight this link at the bottom, which is the user manual. That user manual is incredibly useful and very detailed, right? I gave you the simplest way you can take advantage of this tool. There is a lot more behind it. You see there are these different colors on the screen. There is a red pin, and there is a blue pin, and there is this circle. There is a lot of meaning behind them. If you're really focused on a particular path that you want to explore, for example, you want to figure out when is the best time to work HQ9X, you select the receiver here. You can then go to best frequency, and it will tell you, whoop, not this one, QSO window. It will tell you on what bands you have the highest likelihood of working us. In this particular case, also it's for, go away. It's for short path. You can go back to the setting, and you can say, I want to, actually don't even go through the setting. Here you can say, I want to do propagation predictions based on long path. So there is a lot of stuff that the software can do. Again, my goal for today was to dumb it down to the bare bone so that you can get the most out of the program and have the most fun over the weekend. All right, any last questions before we pass it to Bob?
You know, do
All
you
right.
have the outputs open on a computer at your stations to keep an eye on, or do you usually print out those charts?
I would rather print them because they will not be updating in real time. You kind of have to rerun the forecast. So it doesn't make sense to keep them open. They take real estate. But again, whatever works for you. Sometimes I simply keep the planner open, which is the link to the individual bands. And if I want to look up what's going on, I'll just click on a, okay, this is not working because I messed up the settings. I would just click here and see what's happening. This is more of a planning tool as opposed to what's happening right now.
Can I jump in and add something?
Sure.
Hi, this is Peter, W1DAD. Thank you for presenting this. I was just taking a quick look at the user manual, and page 32 answers the question that you were going to look into. And if I can just summarize it real quickly, that
Oh,
talks
thank you.
about explaining the table colors and characters. And the 2+ symbols says signal power is S9 or more. In the MUF, the maximum usable frequency day is 70% or more. 1+ means signal power is S6 or more, with the MUF day at 50% or greater. And then just the solid black dot says signal power is S1 or more, and the MUF day is 30% or more. And colored but no character, the signal is S1 or more. So everybody can go look at page 32, but that's it in a nutshell.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for
Thanks.
looking it up, Peter. And again, I do encourage everybody to take a look at the menu when you have a little bit of time. My personal experience with this site is that they have done a fantastic job making propagation predictions available to folks with low level of experience with propagation. This includes myself, where the propagation predictions are presented in such a way that it's quite obvious what it's telling you and ultimately drives action.